Welcome to the General's Gentlemen.
Hello. Welcome back to the RTS podcast. Every time I start this podcast, I'm always like, man, it's been months, it's been ages. I should do these more often, and kind of just end up not doing them more often. But yeah, really looking forward to chatting to these two guys. There's definitely some interesting RTS folks out there. So hello to Wayward, a regular.
How's it going? Always happy to be here.
And hello to Kevin Niebert, a new face.
Thanks for the invite.
I've been playing a lot of Company of Heroes with Kevin and his band of merry Canadians.
Yes.
Nice.
We do a lot of 4v4s, and our claim to fame, our highest rank was like 430th or something.
Oh, nice.
We feel very proud about that.
Nice.
Do you guys do allies or Wehrmacht?
We'll switch. Recently, we've been playing Axis, but we're kind of like semi-competitive. Like, we really want to win, and we get super disappointed when we lose, but we won't actually spend the necessary time to look up like build orders and read the patch notes and that kind of stuff. So we
use
get frustrated
hotkeys
when we lose.
I get frustrated when I watch you streaming on Discord and you're like clicking retreat, clicking grenade. And I'm like, use the hotkey, you barbarian.
Yes, I click retreat, I click grenade. It's bad. No. It's really bad.
Yeah. Well, I think today we can start talking about Iron Harvest for a bit. I think that's pretty topical. And it's very relevant to Company of Heroes. It's quite a similar game. Recording this in 30th of August. So Iron Harvest I think is coming out pretty soon. It's like September sometime, right?
I think it's September 1st. It's like a day or two.
Whoa, seriously?
September 1st is. Yeah, it's literally the 1st. So it'll be out probably by the time this airs.
Yeah. This upsets me because I think the game just needs more time to mature, you know. But anyway, Kevin, you played it recently for the first time. What did you think of it? What were some of your first impressions?
Yeah, so I came into it pretty blind. I remember seeing some trailers for it. I want to say like a year, maybe even 2 years ago. Just sort of like introductory teaser stuff. I love the 1920 plus. That's right, 1920 plus.
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah. I love the aesthetic. Played a lot of Scythe, like the board game. So it looked cool to me just from seeing the trailer. I've been playing, I want to say I played like 5 or 6 hours so far, went through a bit of the single player campaign, and then did some 2v2s just with AI, and we played against some like just random people through the quick play. So I definitely, it has a huge Company of Heroes 2 vibe to it, just it doesn't feel quite as refined and like quite as evolved as that. I would just say like first impressions, it's fun, I like it. I really like the mech design. It's quite interesting. Some of them are a little wonky, whatever, but in general, I think it's really, really interesting. You don't usually see models like that or vehicles like that. All the custom animations seem to be quite nice, like the way that there's this massive like rocket launcher mech, and when it destroys, the wheel goes flying off, and like all the custom death animations I thought were quite impressive, at least for the machines. I didn't zoom in too much to see on the infantry that much, but it just feels a little bit clunky to me, I would say. There are some interesting ideas in it. I'd be interesting to see what you guys think about the reinforcements, the reserve system, how you can sort of like create a custom group of infantry that you unlock once you've upgraded your base. That's like a new twist. I hadn't seen that in RTS games before. Have you guys seen anything like that?
Not in multiplayer. It's somewhat reminiscent of games like Homeworld or Warwind that would let you in a single player mission, like bring some of your guys into the mission with you. It also feels like kind of a nod to what Company of Heroes did with the commander system, where you kind of preset like what sort of custom units you have. And I thought this was a kind of a more flexible take on that. You don't have, a guy that you get and you get his things with him. I thought it was kind of cool. It's a cool idea anyway, that you can kind of pick what you want quick access to, and to kind of customize your playstyle to you. I see that I'm shaking. I'm going to try to not lean on the desk so I'm not shaking my camera.
You're just too keen, Brandon. Talking about RTS games gets me keen.
I know. I get too excited, overexcited. But yeah, I've heard of all the balance issues I've heard, a lot of them seem to stem from that reinforcement system.
Right. And it's the coins, right? You start with 6 coins, and like certain units cost 1 or 2 or 3
Yeah,
coins. Based on
and one of them
material
you can get like a giant mech as like a reinforcement unit, and you're like, oh, I got this like machine gun squad and a rifleman and an engineer. You got this giant mech. Like, oops,
Yeah,
you know, I
it seems
clearly drafted this wrong, or like the heroes are really
the biggest
strong.
issue the biggest issue seems to be, from what I've understood anyways, is the timing and the cost of the reinforcements. Possibly there's some issues with how they're costed to slot into the reinforcement slots, but a lot of what I've seen is like the mechs come out too fast, the good stuff comes out too fast for a player that hasn't accounted for that to handle very well.
A lot of my responses to Iron Harvest stuff is like, Company of Heroes doesn't do this. Why are they doing it? It's bad, therefore it's different, therefore it's bad. And some of the things I can sort of appreciate having spent a little more time with it. But the reinforcement mechanic, I don't get it. Like, why though? Like, it just seems to create all these problems, and I just like, even if it's really, you know, balanced and fine-tuned, like, but why though? Like, what does it actually add to the game? I don't really get it. Like, it just seems a way of giving you heroes, but like, I think you can do heroes in a you know, a better way without having to have this whole system.
I kind of do like how they balance that personally, where I mean, I tend to not be a big fan of super units. So going back to Dawn of War 3 with the super elites, when Dawn of War 3 was a thing, you know, I would make it a point to not slot super elites into my compositions, just because I didn't like them. They felt weird to me.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a way to do that, to make heroes useful but not mandatory. So I like that kind of approach. But I mean, you're right. It's entirely possible. It throws off the whole cost curve of some of these units, where, you know, the cost of the structure and upgrade are factored into the power of the unit, and all of a sudden sidestepping that really seems to inherently kind of throw off how tough that unit is to get, and the benefit of having it on the field.
Another thing that I think is a little strange is how it opens it up to basically any unit that you can build normally. So I can't see any situation where I would want to slot in an engineer unit into the reinforcements package, because engineers are like the cheapest units in the game. It just seems strange. Like, maybe they should limit it or somehow balance it so it's really only the more elite style units. And I think I was reading that in an earlier beta of the game, there was like a much larger list of units that all of the 3 factions could use, like the flamethrower, the machine gun, and I can't remember, there's a third unit. But I think in the newer iteration, they've sort of compartmentalized them off so that only one faction can use a machine gun, one faction can use the medic. That was it. It was medic, machine gun, flamethrower. So I think in the current beta, that's the way that it works. Each faction has one, and using the reserve system, you could actually take a flamethrower from a faction that you're not playing and use that as part of your reserve. So that makes sense to me, because it gives you access to a unit that you can't use normally.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense to me to allow you to like purchase units that are already really cheap anyways, even if they cost only 1 of the 6 coins. It just doesn't make sense.
I think the reason why I feel like we're going to spend half of this time making Company of Heroes comparisons, and some people get really mad about this. It's like, it's not Company of Heroes. It's like, yeah, but Company of Heroes is like really good. And if you're going,
I feel like they were inviting the comparison though. Like, it's very clearly a Relic style game. This was always my biggest concern, honestly, is that, like, if they're targeting people that like Relic games, I feel like it's an uncanny valley thing where all you're going to see is the differences. It's like an uncanny valley Relic game where it's just different enough that it's going to piss off the Company of Heroes fans. And it seems to be bearing out based on what Callum's saying.
Yeah. It's interesting.
All he sees is all these little things that are different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, like, in some ways, they so, like, unabashedly just copied Company of Heroes, which I don't have any problem with. So, like, the victory points. And not just victory points, but, like, how it's 500 victory points. Like, wow, what a coincidence. There's 3 VPs on a map. There's 500 VPs. And, like, even the game settings is, like, annihilate, victory points, resources, like, high or low. That's, like, the menu options are just identical, like, 100% carbon copy of code, which, you know, I don't have a problem with. But then in many...
If you're going to copy an RTS, Company of Heroes 2 is probably the best one. Or at least it's the one that I've had the most longevity with. Like I still play it casually years and years after it was released. Like that's a testament to how good of a game it is, how well designed it is.
Well, I think you get a lot of like in a way it's an untapped market in that like how many bad Command and Conquer clones have there been attempted to be, and like you just can't clone StarCraft 2 because it's so complex and so difficult and competitive. So basically, you just get all these bland like CNC clones, and no one has attempted to clone Company of Heroes. And so like it's cool that there has been one game that's attempting to do this Company of Heroes format, and I sort of wish other companies had because it's a really good format. But the point I was getting at is so it's just, in some of the ways they've unabashedly just copied it, but then in many other ways they like really have not copied it at all, and like I don't really understand what exactly it was that causes these systems to exist. I think like a lot of my issues with Iron Harvest can kind of stem from the fact that they're not an RTS team. Like you look at their game history, they've like mostly done RPGs and stuff. So I think that they've sort of tried to get that Company of Heroes formula without really understanding it. And I think you can see that.
Something that really underscores that point is the grenade mechanic. So I'm not sure if you guys have played too much with the Grenadier faction. It's like super long telegraph, actually throwing the grenade. Then the grenade has like a red radial that takes like a second to detonate. It's literally the easiest thing in the world to dodge away from. And it's really just a matter of somewhere there's an Excel spreadsheet that someone needs to reduce those times so that the grenade can actually be much more impactful and like actually damage players who are not AFK from the game. Because like if you're literally watching the screen, you're going to be able to evade that. Where I feel like in Company of Heroes 2, those timings are tuned so tightly that if you are actively paying attention, you can get out of the way. You could do a retreat. You could like whatever. But if not, it's going to catch you. And this game just doesn't have that like tightness, the refinedness of it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think on that one point, like I remember playing earlier and the grenades were undodgeable, so I think you just sort of get the pendulum.
Oh, maybe they pushed it.
They pushed it way too high. I mean, I sort of want to be careful though of talking too much about balance because like balance changes, all the time, and presumably it will improve. Things like grenade timing is like pretty simple. It's just like an obvious. You get an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV file, change that. But I think there's a lot that can be said about the design of Iron Harvest that won't change or probably won't change, and that's like going to limit it in the same way that like with Company of Heroes, I think you can distinguish between what's design and what's balance, and those things are obviously they overlap a lot, but that's a bit more substantive than just like this number needs to change.
So what I think is quite interesting and like helps differentiate it from Company of Heroes is the mechanic where every model drops their weapon, and you can upgrade your model. Which I think is, again, maybe I won't comment on the balance nature of it because you could lose like a machine gun unit, which is quite expensive, and then they could just grab it right away. But just the idea of any of your units are basically interconvertible with any of the enemy's units by interacting with that weapon that they leave on the ground. I thought that was a quite interesting choice. I can't tell if I like it or not because like I've only played maybe 5 or 6 hours or something. It's new to me, and I hadn't played a game that did that. I mean, Company of Heroes, obviously, sometimes models will drop one of their upgraded weapons or the heavy weapons, right? You'll drop the machine gun or the mortar or the anti-tank gun. But just the normal rifleman, like, don't drop a rifle for you to pick up,
Oh, my God. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was worried. I was messing with my audio settings, and I was worried I'd lost my microphone. I think that was probably a clarity thing. The way I see it in Company of Heroes, when a squad drops an upgrade weapon and another squad picks it up, you can't really tell just by looking that model has a weapon. But in Iron Harvest, it's really obvious because the whole squad changes, the squad type changes. I think that was intentionally a choice to increase clarity. I'm not sure about the balance. And again, it's something I can appreciate without being 100% sure if I really like the interaction. But that's part of the reason why I call Iron Harvest like a more arcadey version of the Company of Heroes formula. You know, you've got the pickups for the resources. You've got squads that are literally like transforming into other squads.
Mhm.
Everything just feels a little less tuned toward how you would expect a relic game to play, if that makes sense. It's
Mhm.
I don't know if it's like the way damage scales or the way units like accelerate and decelerate, or what specifically it is. It just feels a little less. I don't know. Arcadey is just how I refer to it when I talk about it. Just because it seems almost a little less realistic, and it's hard to call Company of Heroes 2 realistic.
Mhm.
You know, people tend to get upset when you say that.
Yeah. Actually, there's no way a T-34 can penetrate a panther. Actually, yeah, like those like the neckbeards and the yeah, you know the term like weeboos. It's like veriboos, like verimax. Yeah.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that.
Oh my god, I'm not aware of that. There's a whole
Oh
like another
man,
world that
it's a whole thing, man. There are some people that like really get into like the nitty gritty of like exactly what weapon can hurt what tank, and
And they complain on like balance
specific
terrains
manu-
about
specific
like
projectile
but
velocity.
the specific manufacturer and the numbers produced, and like the Ostwind. People get so mad about the Ostwind because they're like, oh, only 4 of them ever made it onto the front, and I'm like,
yeah.
it's a cool tank.
Well, and it's good art design because an Ostwind is very distinct from a Panzer IV. So
Oh, yeah.
you can look at the Ostwind and go, oh, that's an anti-infantry tank. Whereas if you have like a Panzer IV with a short barrel as anti-infantry and a Panzer IV with a long barrel, it's like that's not very obvious. Like the barrel length, you can't tell that. So yeah, definitely the license for game design, you know, should always overcome those sort of things.
One thing that's I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to switch topics very slightly and say one of my favorite things about Iron Harvest is actually the mech design, because
So cool.
they get a little more, well, not only visually, which it really is cool. I love how the Soviet, I have a hard time calling them Rusviet because it's such a dumb name. The Rusviets, all of their vehicles have little wheels on the back. I think that's kind of fun. But you just get so much more freedom to play around with wacky ideas when you're making up your own mechs. So like the flamethrower mech, and I think my favorite one is the hexagonal one that shoots the rolling bombs. The Saxonies. I don't know the names of any of them.
Yeah.
But
they all have these like crazy European names. It's like I'm way too like Australian to pronounce this thing or remember it even.
But yeah, the one that shoots, it's like the Reaver. It's basically the Saxony Reaver.
Yes,
mech.
right.
I really have a lot of fun with that one.
I think I really like the design of their hero, the Zubov. It's like it looks like a ship, like a land ship, and he has chainsaw hands.
I know, he's like a giant,
an amazing mech design. It's really
that is a phenomenal
rocket pack. He has a rocket pack as well. He can
that is
jump
a phenomenal hero. Yeah, I like that one a lot too. It's like a giant Killacan too. It's got this like Warhammer Orc vibes. That's a very cool mech.
Yeah, I think you can actually draw parallels to Dawn of War and Iron Harvest because they're both very eccentric. And also like you just had the attention to like crazy animations and stuff like the sync kills. So a lot of that appeal resonates. I kind of want to go back to the Grenadier example because like it sort of it demonstrates a few things, like because the problem with the Grenadier that I have is it's just, as far as I'm aware, it's just a regular rifleman squad. It's a rifleman squad except once every 2 minutes it can throw a grenade that can be dodged, and like that's the unit design completely.
Yeah, and the cooldown is pretty long. I find for the grenades, also for the medic, just in general, those special abilities that differentiate the units can be used pretty like rarely. I think it's at least a minute for the grenade. It might be even longer. I'm not sure. It feels long. Like when you're in a battle, it feels like it's always on cooldown.
Yeah, because the infantry combat is definitely what lets Iron Harvest down. Like there just isn't as much depth with, you know, there's no light cover. The weapon profiles are much less pronounced, like, you know, in the way that submachine guns as opposed to rifles. Like I think the difference is just range. A rifle has more range. In Company of Heroes, they all have the same range, but a submachine gun has way more damage up close relative to a rifle, and so you have these interesting interactions where like you want to close in and get up close, but you don't, because then you're going to have to run out of cover, and so there's a lot of like decisions during combat. In Iron Harvest, it just seems you just blob a lot of squads around, and then like you don't get the machine guns until like really late. You have to tech up first, and so like you can't counter this blob with a machine gun. So the infantry combat's really stale, and like I think what would be like a way better design for the Grenadier, and I think this is sort of where you see a lot more of like Relic's creativity come in, is like the Grenadier, whatever, I don't know what it's called, the grenade squad in Dawn of War 2 the Orcs have, where
The
like stick bombers, yeah, their entire thing is that every 30 seconds they have no attack, they can throw a bunch of grenades. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but the point of it is that it dislodges machine gun teams. So like rather than flanking a machine gun, if you throw a bunch of grenades, it'll disrupt it, so you can charge it in melee, and then so it adds this like interesting interaction, and they're for garrison clearing and stuff.
So like a swarm host kind of thing from StarCraft.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, every 30 seconds, and it just continuously, because they'll throw like 10, like the that assault grenade ability in Company of Heroes 2, like with the Volksgrens, will throw like 10 grenades. It's like that, except it's like more about disruption than it is about damage. So yeah, I think the infantry combat's definitely a problem.
I am hopeful they'll continue to work on it. I think it was right before launch. So a lot of people, when the beta first came out, were complaining because infantry, I think when the beta first came out or shortly before, I backed the game, so I've been in most of the play tests so far. Right before launch, basically all of the factions, before they added the Soviet faction, the Russovets, the infantry were actually identical. As far as I know, there were no differences at all between the infantry.
Wow, that makes sense.
And people were really complaining about it. And they actually did like a pass where they were, I think how it is now is Saxony's kind of the all-rounders. Polania are, they prefer ranged skirmishes, and then the Russovets tend to focus on close combat. And they made those changes like either right after the beta launched or right before the public beta. And then again, like another week or two later, they completely overhauled the entire melee combat system because it was benefiting the Russovets more because their units are melee focused. So I have some hope that they're going to continue to work on it. It also reminds me of when Company of Heroes 2 launched. For a little while, infantry would drop prone for anything.
Yeah,
they were fired on it.
Yeah,
that happened. I remember this because I wrote an article about that, or where I mentioned that, and literally when my article dropped, they had changed it, so I had to go back in and edit the article to say, "Oh, it was like this, but they fixed it."
It looked cool, but it was stupid. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they would also wouldn't they like path way out of the way to kind of stay in cover as they were moving, so it would take squads a really long time to get where they were going, and they wouldn't always quite be where you wanted them to be.
Yeah, one of the other things too is when KOTOR launched, like infantry would not clump up; they'd space out a lot, and it was annoying because it meant that you would have like 6 units in a conscript squad. 4 of them would be in heavy cover behind sandbags, and then one of them would be out. 2 of them would be out in the open. So then the machine gun just suppresses the squad, and then the squad gets pinned or whatever. And then they changed it so infantry clumps up, which means they get one shot by mortars and tanks, and it just has this whole can of worms. So then they're never really fixed properly.
So I'm just using that to draw an illustration that we've actually already seen King Art Games trying to adapt to this, and hopefully they'll keep working on it. I'm not sure they realistically can fix the grenade squad specifically all the way. Like I don't know if they would change it to be something like the stick bombers, but hopefully they can. Like for me, the flame squads in Iron Harvest have always been a little disappointing.
Yeah.
They have this giant flame VFX that's like shooting back and forth, but it hardly seems to do anything to squads, and just a kind of a damage boost or have it ignore some cover or something. That might help make them feel more impactful and more worthwhile.
I think what was a really nice design choice for them, and I guess it sounds like this was a more recent call, maybe just before the sort of open beta, was that the basic infantry for each of the three factions is different. So like the riflemen have a bit longer range, which fits more with the, I'm going to call it Poland, Russia, and Germany, because that's sort of what they are. But for the Polish forces, they're more ranged, they're more skirmishy. You have the vanguards, which are like the close combat. They have shotguns. So that basic infantry unit's telling you sort of what to expect and what the strengths of that faction is. So I think that was a nice design call, because you sort of get the idea, like shotguns, rifles, and then the SMGs for the German faction are sort of the mid-range. So you get an idea of like what to expect when you play those particular factions. That was a nice choice.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to get fact checked, but my recollection is that the infantry used to be completely identical when it was just Saxony and Polania, when it was just the two of them.
Seemed like
they
it.
actually,
Yeah.
If they
I mean, it
were,
was close
I had
enough.
no clue that they were different.
Yeah.
There was no indication. I think they even had the same units. I think they both had the machine gunner. They both had the medic
Grenadier,
and the flamethrower.
the like
Yeah,
cannon
there were
dude.
no differences.
So we were saying a little before that Iron Harvest is sort of like an arcadey version. Something that is not arcadey at all is the movement speed for the heavy crew weapons. Like there's that artillery cannon and the machine gun. This is another case where someone's got to go in the Excel file, change that value. It is insanely slow.
Yeah.
And even some of the units, there is for the Russian squad from the advanced barracks, it's like a ironclad infantry unit which fires mortars. They are the slowest moving unit. It took almost the entire time for it to leave my base and get it into the middle of the battle, and then the battle, the match was over. Like we had won the battle. So like there's a couple cases where the movement speed is way too slow, I find.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem with like, I think Company of Heroes still has this problem, is that like the designers of code don't really know what they're doing, and so they just keep like retrospectively making these changes based on community feedback. And I think Iron Harvest is kind of doing the same thing. Is they're just like, oh, okay, people want us to differentiate the units. All right, we'll do that then. And like you never get to like this masterpiece game if there's no like centralized artistic vision. If it's just sort of like, well, the people on Discord want this, so I guess we'll do this then. And then you just get this like you're always playing catch up.
I think that's definitely a problem in the industry, and it applies more to, I think, smaller studios, because your community is way more important. You sort of live and die by the sort of the evangelists, the champions of your game, people who are going to tell their friends to play the game, write a favorable review on Steam, Metacritic, whatever. So I think it's an easy trap for particularly smaller companies to fall into, where you're sort of listening to 10, 20, 30 different people and trying to incorporate all their feedback, and not having a really strong vision and direction of the game from the dev, from the internal team. Certainly it's good to listen to feedback from the community. Sometimes they'll pick up stuff that you never even thought about, like really interesting interactions. They'll find certain units or combinations where everything is broken. That's great to get that sort of feedback. But if you don't have something, if the developers don't have a central vision of what the game is, and they're taking too much feedback from the community, you sort of get this like incomplete, like hybrid game that never really does what it's supposed to do. It tries to do too many things at the same time.
Yeah, I think a great way of thinking about it is the community is really good for letting you know when something's broken, something's wrong, but you need to know what the solution is. Like, and the community will give you solutions, but those solutions are probably bad, because like you can't, as a designer and as a studio, you can't play test enough. So you need people testing and giving you feedback and telling you that this unit's overpowered, this unit's really boring. But then you have to like sit down and think, well, okay, what can we change that makes this interaction adhere to our wider design goal that we have? And like, I don't know if there was a design goal other than just like, hey, let's make a game with cool mechs. You know, like big battles, big mechs, that'll be cool. Yeah. Like, and
I mean, maybe that's what it was. I mean, like, it's taken existing IP that's really cool, and then they saw there's not too many RTS games, sadly, that are coming out. Like, it could have been something as simple as that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like, it's identifying what the problem is, making sure that you're interpreting their feedback to actually understand what the fundamental problem is, and then as devs, we come up with solutions to those problems.
Yeah, they take everything into context and take technical limitations into context in a way that all these things that the community just won't. Yeah, and I think even on that front of like, if the design goal is like, okay, let's make a game that has really badass mechs being really badass and cool and fun to use, I actually feel like they haven't really achieved that. Because for me, mechs don't deliver on the power fantasy. They don't give you that feeling of like, whoa, my mech just blew up all this stuff. And I've ranted about this before. Like, I think one of the main problems that they have is that, like, the visual effects, you mentioned it with the flamethrower, the visual effects and, like, just the scale of the units, like the mechs, they don't actually match the damage and the power in game. There's this big gap between what you would expect a flamethrower or a mortar or a mech to do and what it actually does. You know, like you have the giant Polania mech, and it like fires these giant railway cannons, and it you know, it has great AoE, but it doesn't kill any units. It like does 90% damage on a squad of riflemen, and they have to do that because of balance. It'd be really frustrating if you just one-shot units.
Right.
And so what's elegant about Company of Heroes is that you have these mechanics that Iron Harvest just doesn't have. You have scatter, where things can miss. You have penetration, where things might not always penetrate. And so it means you can have like this power fantasy of this railway artillery cannon that just like devastates, you know, 40 riflemen in a single shot, and it feels amazing. But it's balanced because you have this, like, you know, the red smoke, you can dodge it, it scatters, it misses, it's inaccurate. And if you look at like a King Tiger, like a King Tiger is going to miss. It's going to not always connect. I mean, a King Tiger now, they've reworked like the heavy tanks where they don't like one-shot infantry at full health. Now they have massive AoE, which kind of has that same consequence of making it feel less powerful, I suppose. But then the second shot, it does all this damage. But yeah, I think that they need more of these like mechanics to make the combat feel a lot more devastating, but still be balanced.
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure I agree with that. Like, whenever I play Iron Harvest, the mechs are really like the highlight for me. Like getting that first mech out. Like I tend to play the Rustviets, and I love getting that first flamethrower mech out. And I forget the name of it, but it's like a frog with four guns on it, and when it fires, that you actually watch it articulate back with each cannon. I feel like mech versus mech combat, it's a little slow, but I mean, I'm kind of there for the slower combat. That's what I want out of the game. But I honestly, I feel like they deliver pretty well on the power fantasy for me of you know, big stompy mechs fighting each other. I think that they could definitely tune it a little bit, but I actually have no conceptual or mechanical issues right now with what I've seen from the mech combat.
I think they definitely nailed the power fantasy with the ability to walk through the buildings.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can imagine that
Exactly.
was a technical like obstacle to make that work, and certainly they invested a lot of time and money to make it work, but it pays off. It's super, super cool when your big like Thor mech just like completely demolishes a building. That's quite nice.
But what about like combat? Do you think it also matches?
So maybe trying to think, because I definitely I like the really large, the advanced workshop mechs. Maybe the problem is the difference isn't quite as big. So what I like about, and I'm going to go back to Company of Heroes, of course, is the small units, the light armor, they look much, much smaller than the big heavy tanks. So like if you look at the scale between a Kubel wagon and like a King Tiger or Panther, it's obvious that these are really light. The Scout Car, the Lux, the Panzer II, whatever, those are medium, and then you see the super heavy tanks. With the way that the mechs are designed, I think because of how much space they take up, many of them have large arms. Some of them will have like 4 legs or 6 legs. It's harder to get that sense of scale. They all sort of feel relatively the same size. They'll admit that the big super mech, at least for like the Russian army, or maybe it's the
Polania has a huge
the
one.
Polonia and also Germany, Brumhilde, that like massive AT Walker one. That one visually is extremely impressive and it's huge. It has massive like cannons on both sides of it. Then I feel the scale, but a lot of the other mechs, I feel like they sort of mishmash in between. There's no clear definition between the smaller mechs and the bigger mechs. Maybe that's why you kind of get that feeling.
I think that's fair. I think that there's a bit of muddiness between the light mechs, which I think there are some obviously light mechs, like the two lighter Brustviet mechs look kind of small. They're the Katusha mech. It's kind of like the rocket launcher with wheels.
Yes.
That one feels pretty light. But there are some mechs where it's kind of like, is this a lighter one? Is this a heavier one? It's not quite as easy to tell in terms of how it looks with how much damage it's going to take. I do think that's fair. There's some muddiness there as to just looking at it and being able to gauge its capabilities.
But I think like visually watching two big mechs beat up on each other is quite impressive, especially the more melee oriented ones. So like the second commander for Poland, he kind of looks like Dog from Half-Life. He kind of like walks in a funny way. At least that's the first thing that I thought of. And when you see him dueling with what's the guy's name? Zubov? Or I forgot all the names already. Zubov, yeah, Zubov. Watching them sort of like duke it out, I think it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it's more like shooting infantry. Like infantry don't die quickly enough.
Right.
That's what sort of breaks the realism immersion thing. Is like these giant mortar shells, these giant artillery pieces that detonate on like a squad, and it just doesn't kill them, and it just seems very like grating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
but
same with the big mechs too. You know, when they shoot infantry, and the infantry don't die.
To Brandon's point, there is quite a lot of cool articulations and custom animations for each of the mechs. That certainly was a huge amount of work, and it makes them feel more unique. The way that all the cannons sort of had the recoil and that sort of thing, and like I mentioned before, all the custom death animations. Like, definitely a lot of time and money went into making them feel unique.
They've done a lot of work. I think. Each mech tends to have like its own unique character to it, and even between the factions, especially with the Rustviets, they definitely put like. I was a little worried at first. I know a lot of this stuff is based on the art of. I don't want to butcher his name. It's Jacob Brzezowski.
Jacob,
Mr. Werewolf.
Mr. Werewolf. Yes.
That's what he calls himself
on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm familiar with his stuff mostly from Instagram, which is, I mean, I wasn't super familiar with him or honestly with King Art Games before I'd heard about Iron Harvest. So I came to this kind of tangentially. Like, I found out about the game because I follow RTS, not because I know the artist or the board game or even the developer. So it was all kind of new to me when I started looking into it. But I wasn't really aware at first that the artist had kind of been building this world for a long time. Mm-hmm. And when the game was in its infancy, they had only had so many units designed. So the factions were really samey to me in the first couple months of the beta, and I wasn't sure how to tell them apart. And they've really done a good job, I think. Being able to look at a Saxony mech and say, okay, this is, belongs to that group.
Mm-hmm. I would also say there's a nice variety. I think each faction has 6 or 7 mechs. So that's quite a few. It's more than I expected. And it's enough to not be able to, like, I don't know all of their names right away. You sort of see, okay, this is a new one. I haven't really fought that one before. There's enough variety where it feels kind of new, at least having only played for a couple hours. But that's a lot of effort to make all of those work. Like, I just know, like, my heart goes out to all their riggers and the animators, and like, it's just it must have been very, very difficult. And I suspect as a small team, they're really passionate about it and love the IP. And I think that kind of comes through in the way that the mechs are executed in the game.
Man, I feel like I'm being the fun police here.
That's fine.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's very beautiful. It's stunning.
I think it's the the biggest challenge is judging the game on its own merits versus judging it against Company of Heroes.
Yeah.
Company of Heroes is, you know, a bigger studio, a more developed studio, and it's. I think I've said this before, but it's always been my biggest worry about Iron Harvest is that they're making a game that's directly comparable to Company of Heroes. Everyone that's played it that plays Company of Heroes is going to say this is like Company of Heroes. People that haven't played Company of Heroes are going to say, wow, this is probably like Company of Heroes. And I'm not sure they've done quite enough to set themselves apart. And as good as it is by itself, I do think that it doesn't really stand up to that kind of scrutiny. I think they have the potential, you know, if they, I think Scythe has what, five or six factions anyway.
Oh,
If
7.
they keep adding,
Oh, there's
7?
Technically 8. Yeah.
Okay.
There's five in the base game though.
Then there's 2. There's an expansion, and then there's like a single player faction, I think, with one of the other expansions.
So if they keep adding to the world, I think a third or a fourth and a fifth faction could be a really big deal to this game. If they add, I think some of the other mechs actually look substantially different.
Crimea has
some of the
like
art
penny
that I've seen.
farthings.
I'm sorry, I missed
Crimea,
what you
the
said.
Crimean mechs. It's like in Scythe. It's like a penny farthing. It has like the you know, like the Tsar tank there's in real life, like this prototype thing. It do you know like what a penny farthing is? It's like a historical bike, like a bicycle with this.
Nope.
Google it right now. Just Google
Sorry.
penny farthing.
Okay, I will.
Or even just like Scythe Crimea mech. It just looks really quirky. And also like there's the Tsar tank.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the Tsar tank's like crazy. And
Interesting.
that's a real life thing. It was like a prototype tank during World War One. That's sort of what like the Crimean mechs look like. And if you type in Scythe Crimea mech, I think you'll
Okay.
They have this like penny farthing sort of look to them, which is a really cool style.
Okay.
It's very unique and quirky. And I mean what I actually like about Iron Harvest is, at least with Polania, like Poland is never in RTS games. You know, you have like England, America, Russian, Germany. Like, when was the last time Poland was a faction in a game? And like, I want, for my other faction, like I want Crimea. You know, like I want this another weird like Balkan faction that's like never been in an RTS game before. And then you have like this really unique kind of accent, like this Polish accent you haven't really heard before. It's cool having like a different perspective, and they are a Polish studio, and Jacob is a Polish artist, so obviously they're gonna so they're German. King Art is a German studio. They're not Polish, but Jacob is Polish. So that's sort of why, you know, Polania are the good guys, the Republic of Polania against
Gotcha.
you know, evil.
I actually didn't know that. I was mostly focused on the Ruskiet faction and interested to see how they were going to handle their version of the October Revolution. And apparently Rasputin is in the game, or at least in the cutscenes. So I was interested in seeing that play out during the campaign.
Yeah.
Did you play much of the campaign?
I've done none, actually.
Okay.
I mostly it's been skirmishes, 1v1s, and some of the challenges. One of the challenge maps was one of the first things they actually made available to players. It was the one where you're constantly assaulted by waves of enemies.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time I really saw promise in the game. I had a tremendous amount of fun playing that challenge map. That was back when the Polania sniper one-shotted like anything. It was really really hard to get up close to because it would just murder anything. One shot would just take anything out. I kind of missed that because it was kind of bold.
I feel like there's a missed opportunity for them for those the hero units. So each of them, there's the Anna, the sniper, where it's cool. Her special ability is the precision shot, which is like an arrow that can go through multiple units if they're sort of clumped up. And she has the bear who like runs out and mauls them, but it's not different enough to make it stand apart from Company of Heroes. I feel like they could go fully like Warcraft 3 sort of, where the
Or
heroes
Dawn of
have
War 2
more
would be
hero
a
powers. They
closer
have maybe one or
comparison.
two or three, maybe more cooldowns, maybe not mana, like mana wouldn't fit, but additional abilities with cooldown so that they feel more unique and are more different than just sort of stock infantry, but with one extra ability. I think that's a missed opportunity.
Again, I'm gonna be a little contrarian and push back on this a little bit because I actually really like that heroes. Now, I don't know for a fact. I think maybe most people pick them, but I kind of like that they're optional instead of mandatory. And making them too good, they can't be optional at that point. I kind of want to see them play around with different power scales with hero units. So like maybe a really weak hero that's cheap, and then a really strong hero that takes up an entire reinforcement slot or something. I think there's some fun wiggle room they're giving themselves to play around with, and I'd like to see them do that more than kind of lean in on the mandatory Warcraft style heroes, because Warcraft 3 matches tend to be dominated by the heroes a lot of the time. You know,
Yeah,
I've
and
seen-
in order to balance like heroes like that, you need to create items and TP scrolls, and like you sort of have these systems around it. Like I think Dawn of War 2 is a much cleaner comparison, because it fits into Company of Heroes like as that style already. I mean,
How does that compare to Dawn of War 3 with the heroes? Are they similar to Dawn of War 2? I'm not super
So
familiar
Dawn of
with
War 2 actually has heroes that are interesting and well designed and fit into the faction. Because you start with your hero at level 1 at the beginning of the game, and your hero like levels up throughout the course of the game and gets stronger, and you have these different upgrades and these different abilities, these different war gear that you get different weapons on them, you get different like shields and whatnot. So Dawn of War 2 does heroes really well. So it's like a Company of Heroes style game, except you have melee combat and you have heroes, and it all fits in quite nicely.
I see.
Dawn of War 3 heroes were a disaster.
Honestly, in Dawn of War 3, it wasn't. I wouldn't call them heroes in any meaningful sense of the term. Anyway,
Yeah, that's true.
They were basically unique
Elites.
units.
Yeah,
Right.
They called them elites, and it's honestly kind of similar to what I hope to see Iron Harvest do. They had this other resource, this third resource in Dawn of War 3 called don't know what
elite
it was.
points.
Purple
I think
resource.
it's just
Purple.
called
It's the
elite
purple
points.
resource.
And you gained it very slowly. It was like 1 point every 3 minutes, and some points on the map could let you generate them slightly faster. But once you spent it, it was spent forever. So you would buy a hero with 2 points of purple, and then if it died, you'd just get a cooldown and it would come back. And both activated abilities and heroes cost purple resource, and each time you use an active ability, it costs additional purple each time you used it.
Like the orbital strike, like that one. But I think that's what it was.
Basically, yeah, each faction had one orbital strike ability. It might have been more interesting to give them a couple of abilities with varying levels of power. But it's basically you picked your 3 elites outside of combat, and then you could call them in over and over again once you'd unlocked them in combat. I hate being the odd man out on all this, but being contrarian, I think they didn't implement it as well as they could have. But I thought it was pretty interesting. The big thing for me is that probably choosing an elite, bringing elite into combat, should have had a bigger cost associated with it, because they were basically free.
Yeah.
I think the idea was that a player who's behind can still be in the game with the elites without having to spend additional resources, but it didn't work at all.
Because your opponent also gets free overpowered units.
Exactly.
So like
so
completely
it was
balances out.
it was supposed to help the player that was behind, but it didn't do what it was intended to do because the system wasn't fully fleshed out. It wasn't thought through all the way.
Well, my concern with having like Iron Harvest with like more emphasis on heroes is then you like further get that visual mismatch where you have like, you know, little skinny Polish woman who somehow you know is getting shot at by giant mech weapons and just
completely
shrugs them
ignores
off.
them.
Yeah, and like in Dawn of War, it's okay because like you have, you know, I mean, it's it's sci-fi, right? But also you have these like giant armor suits and like it's just Warhammer. It's so ridiculous. And in Warcraft 3, it's all fantasy and stuff. It's just so different. But in Iron Harvest, I think like the power fantasy is like gritty, World War One, alternate history, mechs killing stuff. But I agree with you in that, like, the heroes aren't very interesting. It'd be nice if they were more interesting somehow.
I like what they did where they, at least the 3 starter heroes, each have a pet or 2 pets. So the German officer has like Tog and Not, I think, the wolves.
Yep.
And the Russian has like, is it a
tiger.
Cheetah or a tiger? That's it, a tiger. So it was a cool idea. It just, I don't know. It's not different enough to make it really interesting, I find. They just sort of behave like a normal infantry unit. There's not enough that makes them special, I don't think.
And in Scythe, every character has a pet. Like the Crimean one has a hawk. And then there's like the Norse one that has, I don't know, it's like some kind of pack animal or something. I mean, I think what's the Polish one? She has like booby traps. Well, I mean, like the abilities that they have. I think she has the bear, but she also has like a satchel ability, kind of like in Company Heroes, you can blow something up. But
it's like I think it's similar to the Russian engineer's demo charge.
Right.
As you plan it, and then later it can detonate.
Oh, and she cloaks as well, right? She has like a stealth mechanic, I think. The Russian, I don't know the characters' names. I'm terrible.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd have to look it up. Anyways. That would help differentiate it a bit more, potentially.
I do think it's a little bit of a waste to have basically one thing in the game that can stealth. That seems weird to me. Usually, in Dawn of War 2 is a perfect example. Several units in each faction have stealth, and it's something that to expect, if you're going up against orcs, the commando knob has stealth, or lictors, I think, have stealth. So you know that you can expect to have to deal with stealth at some point. But in Iron Harvest, there's one thing in the game that has stealth, and you have no clue as to whether or not you're going to see it. You have no clue as to whether or not a unit can deal with it or not. I do think that's a bit of a problem. That's a very weird kind of one-off system in the game.
Yeah,
and I don't think there's no counterplay either, right? There's no stealth detection or anything like that. I think
actually don't know.
Purely on a cooldown, I believe. And it's Olga. Her name is Olga. That's it.
Olga's the Russian. Yeah, that's right. Olga.
Yeah.
I don't know the other ones.
Romanov.
Yeah. Okay, so I have another question. What do you guys think of the economy? Because like you can upgrade your iron and oil into like a big mine and a big oil mine.
Something that I'm not 100% sure about is when you capture it from someone else, does it still maintain the upgrade
big
level?
Yeah.
Yes.
The model changes. You physically see it turn into a big thing. And on the mini map, it also shows there's like 2 rings. So it shows you that your opponent has upgraded even through the fog of war.
I do find it, I'm not a big fan of seeing everything your opponent's captured, because it takes a bit of some of the guesswork out of where they are and what they're doing. I think that's a bit of a mistake. It's kind of exploitable by the player. I actually don't have a problem with the economy as much. Again, going back to the earlier phases of the beta, you used to have more income, and the game would progress a lot faster up to the mechs. I think slowing it down fits with the game. It gives you more time to make choices with infantry. But it is a little frustrating coming from the earlier phases of the game where you could get a mech out in like 2 or 3 minutes, and it's substantially slower now. I think the reinforcements offsets that a bit, but we already talked about how that actually causes potential balance and cost issues. But yeah, I think the economy it's not flashy, but it does the job for me.
I don't I kind of like the idea of upgrading the mines and the oil rigs, because you're making an investment into your economy, which means you can have quite a large army. The thing that isn't super clear to me is I noticed that the strategic point, it has multiple dots that fill up.
Yeah, I
And
never
I did
knew
a
what that
quick
actually
test the
meant.
other day. I had always imagined that as the dots fill up, it gives you more victory points per second, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I did a test. You get zero point 0.3 victory points per second per strategic point that you hold, whether it has 0 dots or 5 dots. So now I'm thinking maybe the dots correspond to how long it takes to decap it, maybe, and capture it
Oh.
from you.
Interesting. Um, yeah, I haven't examined that system recently. In a, in the older versions of the game, what
Mhm.
happened was the first time you captured a victory point, you actually immediately got a set number of victory points added to your total whenever you captured one. So capturing a victory point from your enemy would directly benefit you because you would immediately get some victory points. I don't think that happens anymore, though. I think they removed that from the game. So I have no clue what those dots are. I've wondered what those are myself.
Yeah, I have to look it up, but I wasn't able to just figure it out just playing around in the skirmish matches. I thought if it was the case, if the number of victory points per second scaled up with how long you held the strategic point, that could be a bit of a balance problem. But conversely, it makes the strategic points more valuable in a way that you can't allow your enemy to have that one captured too long, because it could like completely snowball out of control. Imagine having 2 points with 5 dots.
Yeah.
Could be like you could be racking up victory points like insanely fast.
I kind of like that idea because I feel like Company of Heroes can have a problem where you have like an hour-long game, and like I feel like an hour is too long. I sort of wish Company of Heroes games maxed out at like 40 minutes. So that sort of mechanic is interesting. My problem with the economy is I feel like just the optimal way to play is to upgrade every point as soon as you possibly can. And then you don't bother upgrading your barracks, you don't bother getting light mechs, you just go immediately from rifleman to the like ultimate tier mechs. Because you have the reinforcements in the middle, and also because you have the free anti-mech cannons in the middle of the map that you can just get whenever you want. It means that like if your opponent rushes a mech, well, you already have a mech cannon, anti-mech cannon, and then they'll have this thing on the map for a couple of minutes or a few minutes, and then you just have this end tier mech that just kills everything. So yeah, I feel like the problem with having like the economy where you pay to upgrade it is it discourages you from upgrading your barracks and unit mixing with machine guns, unit mixing with flamethrowers and mortars. It discourages you from getting the light mechs. So it slows the game down because it means for the first 5 minutes, all of your money. I mean, I haven't played a lot of it, so I don't want to make these like generalizing claims with a limited experience of games. But all of your money either goes into spamming the basic starting unit, like rifleman or whatever, or it goes into upgrading points. And then only after the first 5-10 minutes, only then do you start making decisions about like what do you build. And at that point, you basically just go for the end tier mech.
So playing devil's advocate here, though, if you're spending all your money upgrading your points and your opponent's spending all of their money getting units, wouldn't it be very hard to hold on to those points? Especially since like we established earlier, the good tools for handling infantry blobs don't come until late, since you have to upgrade your barracks to get them. What I've seen, I haven't played. I don't play at a super high skill level personally, but what I've heard pretty commonly happens is that players just rush to get their reinforcements out. So what I've heard about
that makes sense because they're very strong.
Does not jibe with that.
There's another option though. If you're not spending all your money on upgrading the resource generation points, maybe you have an extra 1 or 2 units of either engineers or riflemen, and you're going out and you're collecting those crates which have like steel and
they're not much
oil, or there's the weapon upgrades as well. So like maybe there is a little bit of a choice there. Do you go pure economy research, or do you get a couple extra units to gather all the resources across the map from the crates?
But you can get them at the start of the
game.
game. They're, like, it doesn't take long to capture them. You don't get that much resources anyway. I mean, you used to get a lot of resources from them, which was pretty silly.
I feel like it used to be more.
Yeah, it was a lot more originally. It wasn't. It was silly.
But I actually like having the anti-tank weapons out on the map. Personally, a lot of the time when I play Company of Heroes, the worst part of the game is when one player gets out a vehicle and the other player doesn't have an anti-vehicle weapon.
Yeah.
And I feel like having those on the map actually reduces the chances of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's potentially bad for you to get them too quick because those weapons aren't super good against infantry and are vulnerable to being attacked from the sides and rear.
And you lose a score
selecting,
to get it.
capturing one of them too fast can be bad for you. So I think I like the counterplay that's enabled by having that on the map, and I feel like it deals with one of the bigger issues that happens in timing attacks in Company of Heroes.
I hadn't thought about that, and that's actually a really nice design choice to have that, because at least from playing Company of Heroes 2, when you see that medium armor, you mass retreat. Like anywhere it's near your troops, you're running away from it because I don't have anything that can deal with that right now.
The half track or the Ostwind, it comes out and there's that like solid minute of panic. So you can get out something that can deal with it.
At least you have snares, like you can just double anti-tank grenade. But yeah, you still, for an Ostwind, you want to just like mass retreat. Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
I did notice that, again, comparing it back to Company of Heroes, a lot of the arcs are quite tight in Iron Harvest, particularly for the machine gun. It seems to be really, really small and easy to sort of get around the angles. I know that the various machine guns in Company of Heroes do have varied arcs and ranges. It just feels like that heavy machine gun emplacement in Iron Harvest is a bit limited in its arc. I just noticed it a couple times playing through skirmishes. You can really easily get around it.
I always played Soviet, and they have the narrowest machine gun arc in Company of Heroes 2, so that's probably why I didn't notice.
You didn't even notice. Like, it's fine.
I don't think it's as bad as what it used to be, because I think the Maxim used to have an even smaller arc. It was really silly. It's still pretty thin, but it's not as thin as before. The back to the economy, it kind of reminds me of Dawn of War 3, and I think in my mind it sort of creates the same problem where it means that like you spend so much of the early game just upgrading resources that it delays you doing the interesting things, teching up and getting new weapons and stuff. Like when I play Company of Heroes 1, like I when I'm a Mero, like I want to get the weapon support center and I want to mix in a machine gun and a mortar, because like that's interesting. You have all these different things now. You have these multiple different tools, but it's just like not worth it. It's just bad. It's just like getting those weapon teams as Americans just is not a good way of playing.
My personal experience. Now I absolutely agree with the first part of what you're saying. In Iron Harvest, it is all the interesting stuff takes way too long to come out. I think all of the units that have the most interesting interactions. Now, potentially frustrating, because who likes getting a bunch of their squads caught by a machine gun? But the first couple of squads you can get out don't really do anything really interesting. You have the grenade mechanic, but that's really about it, and deciding whether your angle of attack. I definitely see that, but in my personal experience, and again, caveat, I'm not the best player by a mile. I have not seen a lot of games where they are super slow because of upgrading. Because resources are so tight, choosing to upgrade at the wrong time seems like it just puts you behind in trying to contest territory and hold off whatever your opponent's trying to do, especially if they're Rustviet and they want to get right up in your face with their shotguns.
Well, one of the things that that sort of prevents like the play with the biggest army from dominating is the reinforcement timings are instant. As soon, and when you retreat, by the way, you don't retreat to like your HQ. I'm pretty sure you just retreat to your closest building, like on the edge of your base. And so, and then once you're back on your base, when you reinforce, you immediately get units replaced. So like losing a fight in Iron Harvest is less punishing because you reinforce really quickly. And also, there's no healing. like in Co, if you can have 5 models, but you can have half of your health. In Iron Harvest, I don't think that happens, and so it seems like it's not as punishing to just like mass retreat, reinforce instantly, come back in the fight full health and fight again.
I see what you're saying. On the flip side, though, retreat in Iron Harvest seems really slow. Units don't seem like they get a big speed boost when they run away.
True.
And it seems more common to have squads die on retreat because they're so slow. Especially the weapons teams that have to laboriously turn around and then just walk back to the base.
Yeah.
And they definitely chose to handle healing differently with having the dedicated medic unit. Something that I don't like about the medic unit is cooldown is really, really long. And that means you can only heal 1 unit every minute and a half. I don't know exactly how long. Again, this is my impression. Cooldowns are very, very long. And it makes the medic kind of useless because all they have are pistols. So they're not very effective in combat. And their healing potential is very, very low compared to like a medic that you would get in Company of Heroes and back at the base, like when you build your field hospital and stuff. And I agree that it's an interesting choice to allow you to reinforce all of your units at the same time. There's no cap to how quickly you can heal them using medics like you would in Company of Heroes. So they took a totally different design choice for handling how to like repair. They want you to heal people more in the field, I think, by using the medic unit. But
Yeah, you can heal
like
it in combat, right? Like it doesn't get dissolved when you get shot at.
It doesn't, but it makes the medic unit not useful, but it doesn't really do much damage anyways, so it's okay. You're okay if it's channeling this healing first aid ability. Although
Okay.
I did see that they have, at rank 1 experience, they get an extra ability. I wasn't able to experiment it with myself, but from what I had read, it turns it into like a healing station. They become stationary, the medics,
Okay.
and then I think it does an AoE heal. That's a little bit more interesting to me. But unfortunately, it's locked behind 1 level of
Yeah,
veterancy.
that's strange. It's like with the engineers, you can't build a machine gun bunker unless you get Vet 1. That seems like a
Yes.
very strange choice to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think.
veterans.
Go on, Brandon.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I think, like, I feel like I need to play the game more in order to get a more fair understanding. Like, I'm sort of, I don't want to be, like, making all these wide claims from, only having played, like, 10 games or whatever. But I just don't, I don't really want to. Like, when I play Iron Harvest, I'm just like, yeah, but I just would rather play Company of Heroes, though.
I feel the same way. Like,
and-
makes me want to play Company of Heroes.
And so that's sort of where I'm caught, right? Like my initial first impressions are just like, I can't build machine gun teams, because they're locked behind an upgrade for some reason. Like I really wish, machine guns and mortars and maybe even flamethrowers. You just had these things you could get early on, so you could have this interesting unit mixing. You could like have more ways of combating this blob of 5 squads of vanguards running around.
I feel like Iron Harvest does kind of lean on veterancy pretty hard. A lot of unit interactions, interesting unit upgrades and interactions, are trapped behind veterancy, where it's not as common that you see that in Relics games. And again, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that, because it seems like there's a lot of interesting stuff, but I haven't had a lot of chance to use it because either the squads die or the match ends too soon. So I don't know. I feel like I keep being the contrarian here, but I'm actually really happy with Iron Harvest for the most part and excited about being able to play it on ladder once that's a thing. So the mechs I think are really what sold me on it. They're just more interesting to me than a tank. There's a couple of tanks I'm happy with in Company of Heroes 2, but I just like the fun toys that they've given me to play with, to be a bit reductive with it. Like the Polania, the mortar that you can garrison squads in.
That's cool.
That is a lot of fun. And I wish I knew the names of the mechs, but the Rusviet mech that has the giant scythe hands. And to me, that's not even the point of that. Isn't even to kill things. Although when it gets up close to something, it's spectacular. But it's just to take shots for your other stuff. It's this big giant threat that's moving towards your army, and you don't get those kind of interactions to me as much in Company of Heroes in the same way, because you know a tiger or a king tiger, you know, if it gets up in your face or anywhere near your army, it's a completely, you know, kind of a monolithic threat. It can kill anything. And there's only a couple things that can directly challenge it. And with Iron Harvest, I feel like there's some more fun interactions that can happen between the different mechs, because the mechs are so different because they're not bound to the laws of reality in any way.
The big claw mech also has an interesting ability. I think it buffs your infantry and will remove suppression. It's something like that. So it's kind of a cool idea to have this big assault mech that complements and synergizes with your nearby infantry as well. That's quite nice. I can't think of too many tanks in Company of Heroes that have that kind of like infantry synergy.
Oh, the KV-1 does. The KV-1 has some buffing ability. Yeah, anyway. I think, I mean, Heavy, going back to sort of like when we were discussing like the powerness of these giant mechs, I think something really crucial that needs to be considered with like the balance and the unit design is actually the map design. Because I mean, I've only played 1v1s. The 1v1 maps are pretty small, and also the way that the victory points are done is that you have like, this is your free victory point that's right near your base. This is your free victory point that's right near your base, and then there's one VP in the middle somewhere. And what that means is then when you get these giant mechs, yes, they're really slow and clunky, but all you do is you just put them in the middle of the map, and you don't really have to like send them anywhere in particular.
Or you base rush.
Or you base, yeah, exactly.
I've seen a lot of that actually.
Yeah, probably more common
sending
than
in
base rushing.
like tier 2 infantry and then some mechs and just completely camping someone's base.
Yeah. Whereas in Company of Heroes, the maps, I mean, they're still not huge, but relative to the size and speed of a tiger, the maps are a lot bigger, and the points are more spread out, and I think at least it's got better. Company of Heroes 2, the VPs are a bit more centralized. Some of the earlier maps had, you know, a free victory point. And what that means is that like, even if you have this heavy tank, which is just like outright overpowered, like there's only one of those heavy tanks, and there's 3 victory points, and also there's fuel points, and so like you can't have it everywhere, and so you can have this unit that is really overpowered that delivers this power fantasy, but is still balanced, even if not because of the unit interactions itself, but just because it's slow and, you know, it can't be everywhere you need it to be. And like, I think this is more so in Company of Heroes 1, is like you have the you know, the King Tiger, and like you don't have good tank destroyers with Americans, and so like you have to just sort of play around it.
Do you feel though that that's not really the case in Iron Harvest? Because we've already established there's some stuff that's arguably almost too slow in Iron Harvest, so it seems like that's already kind of applicable, especially some of the bigger mechs like the Rusty Scythe mech are pretty slow, and they can't really challenge the whole map. Which I think is probably partially why base rushing is so common, besides the fact that bases don't really have good defenses in Iron Harvest, which I think is an interesting dynamic. And I actually kind of like to see that. Bases are pretty vulnerable, and it encourages it a lot more. It encourages base assaults a lot more than you see in Company of Heroes. It's very rare to me. You're basically have to have lost very badly in Company of Heroes to have someone come into your base.
Yeah, the defender's
that's
advantage.
Not the case at all.
The defender's advantage in Iron Harvest is instant reinforcing. It's like, you're in my base, I can reinforce instantly. I played one game, and yeah, this guy just walked engineers into my base. Just like, cool, I see what your buildings are, and he walked out. And I thought that was cool, like scouting. Company of Heroes is like, doesn't have base scouting at all, which I think is not as interesting. But you don't need it because it's so predictable with like tech paths and stuff.
Something that I liked about the map design, and I'm not sure if it was present in 1v1 maps, I only was playing 2v2 maps, but at least, I can't remember the name of it, but on the left-hand side near one of the victory points was this massive like artillery cannon, which had a limited range, so it could only fire sort of from into the center of the map. You couldn't like aim at their base. And I was able to use, I think it was an engineer squad, and I just put it in there. And this cannon ended up doing insane amounts of damage. Like I was able to locked that position down pretty well, and I was able to bait in a couple mechs into the range of this cannon. I thought that was quite cool to have sort of an environmental weapon that you can equip. Eventually, the guys we were playing against got smart enough and like went around the back way, and then were able to clear me out. But I thought that was a cool thing. I hadn't played many RTSs that have sort of static weapon emplacements that you can sort of garrison with your units and then be like flushed out. And then they took it over, so we knew we couldn't go that way because it was covered by this massive artillery cannon.
Yeah, that's sweet.
That is
I
pretty
didn't
neat.
know that.
I
I've
haven't
only
played
played
it.
1v1, so I haven't seen any of that stuff.
The other thing that some maps have that I haven't seen a lot of players take a lot of advantage of, but I think is a neat idea, is they have explosive barrels. So you'll have
Are they
good
red?
cover. Yeah, the red barrels. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. When you destroy those, it blows up the cover and whatever's next to it. So there is some kind of interesting environmental stuff that they're experimenting with, that I think does bring a little bit of interest to the gameplay.
I
Plus,
haven't played.
the maps actually look pretty good. I think they did a good job with the environmental design on the multiplayer maps.
I agree with that, and I was just saying I haven't played too much with the garrisoning of
Garrisoning.
buildings.
Garrisoning.
Garrisoning.
Of buildings. I know that you can, and I had equipped a couple of units in it, but I didn't. I understand that there's damage mitigation while my units are inside, but what I liked about Company of Heroes is you always see the unit shooting out the window. Like you can sort of see them. There's a physical representation. I mean, they enter the building and then physically magically snap, but I don't care about that. I wanted to see the guys in the building. Where in Iron Harvest, they're just sort of like abstractly somewhere in the building and they're firing out of it. So it just felt a little bit weird. I'm not sure if you get crazy value from having units in buildings. It's something you have to play more to get a feel for it.
I have not noticed a substantial difference. Units still seem to take damage, and it's unclear. Like with Company of Heroes, you can only the number of squad models that have a window can shoot out. And I have absolutely no clue how that works in Iron Harvest. If there's a limit, like if can they shoot out of a side of the building where there's no windows? I don't know. So I have no clue. It's not as clear to me whether there is a benefit or how exactly it works, which is definitely something that
I'm not sure either.
Have done very well.
Co 1 and Co 2 also handles garrisons very differently. Like in Co 1, garrisons are like super powerful. They're like really strong, but then flamethrowers counter them really well. In Co 2, it's kind of different. Like garrisons are not necessarily that strong, because you can just beat a garrison if you're behind heavy cover, but then they don't get hard counted as much. I kind of prefer how it is in Co 2. I feel like ultra powerful garrisons in Co 1 is just annoying. Slows the game down too much.
The next time I play Iron Harvest, the first thing I'm going to test is a garrisoned unit and walking a mech through it. I wonder what that interaction is. I'm hoping it's like an instant wipe. You just like,
I
Yeah.
want to see that. Oh,
I'll keep you posted.
I might have to try
next
the
test.
same thing. Because
Yeah.
I really want to see what happens.
I guess the point of why I wanted to talk about the map sizes is you're right, units are very slow. It's sort of it kind of reinforces where like the level of destruction that the mech can handle has to be limited by the size of the map. Like it can't be too powerful because the map's tiny, but then also it has to be really slow because the map's tiny. I feel like bigger maps might actually help the game and allow them to make things more mobile and more powerful, like the mechs anyway, and like just give a bit more interesting like depth to the maps.
I agree, and also, like you said, it'll mitigate the idea of this is my VP and your VP, and then the contested VP. A slightly larger map gives you more real estate to play with in terms of where the VPs are located, where the resource points are located, and also where pickups are located. So I can't remember I don't remember the names of any of the maps myself, but there's one where there's a river, and off on the left side there's just a ton of resource pickups, and I know typically one player will go up the side of the map and just try to grab all that, and I think that's interesting that you have that choice between really early in the game trying to get those resource boosts versus trying to capture your longer term resource income with the capture points.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's as useful as it was before because they decreased the value of each individual pickup. But I still think there's the timing of the pickups is interesting in terms of how the matches play out and whether you want to go for an early game strategy or whether you're playing for the longer for the next to come out.
I'd be curious about the weapon crate distribution. I wonder if it's random or if it's set. So like there could be builds or strategies where there's a, I don't know.
It's not random. They're preset.
Oh, it's not random. Okay, so
they're preset on the map.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I could see that being part of your strategy, like rushing to get certain particular weapons to upgrade your units.
That's typically how I tended to play, although I haven't played much on the latest patch where they've got all the infantry changes. But typically what I would do is I would go out and try to capture just a couple of my closest resource points and then get as many of the pickups as I could, because that gets me a big jump up on my first tech level to get the higher tech units out.
Yeah, and as I've been playing, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You want the grenade upgrade because it's like a free upgrade. Your rifleman is just getting an objectively stronger squad now, whereas like you find the mech cannon and you're like, oh, I don't want that. The cannon squad.
Yeah, you'll spam some riflemen or engineers and just get them out, like picking up all those weapons at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually like that system. When I first played it, I thought it was terrible because the pickup, it was too much. Now I think it is nice because there is an opportunity cost there of, do I upgrade my regions? Do I capture them? Do I try to steal my opponent's like resources? Because it's not enough that it's like necessarily a big deal, but it is enough that it's still worth like getting.
Mm-hmm.
The other good thing about it is your opponent can't necessarily tell which ones you're getting. With the resource points, you can see on the mini-map which one you're capturing. With the pickups, you can just sneak out and get them, and it's not as immediately obvious that you're getting at a jump on your opponent. You're getting stuff that they wouldn't want you to have.
I know we touched on it just a little bit at the beginning, but what's your verdict on picking up weapons from a wiped unit? Like having that ability to having won a fight, choosing like the best weapons of the squads that you wiped from your opponent.
I don't really like it that much because personally, I feel like when you're playing, you sort of want to have a bit of a composition of, okay, I have one engineer for repairs, I have 3 riflemen / grenadiers because they're the same. I have like a mech cannon squad, and then like, well, there's another mech cannon squad, but I don't really need 2 of them. So apart from the grenadier squad, like I don't think I really ever bother doing that. I don't ever swap my rifleman squad for a cannon squad. I mean, it'll be more so like if my one anti-mech cannon squad dies and I'm like, oh no, I need another one. And then I'll send my engineers to pick up they're called cannon squads, right? Like the portable cannons. So I guess it's in one way, one positive is that it's like an anti-snowball mechanic because, again, back to Company of Heroes, like if you have, or analogizing to Company of Heroes, if you have one mech and your opponent has like only one anti-mech squad and that anti-mech squad dies, like it's easier to come back for you because you can pick up the dead anti-mech cannon with your engineers. Whereas in Company of Heroes, like if you lose your only anti-tank gun or your anti-tank squad, now you can't do anything for the next 5 minutes until you rebuild it or however long it takes you to save up resources. So I guess in that sense it achieved something, but overall I feel like it's kind of meh because it isn't really fun like stealing a weapon because you lose a squad. In Company of Heroes, it's really fun stealing your opponent's machine gun, and it's exciting too because there's risk reward. Like your squad's vulnerable while stealing a weapon, especially if you have a 4-man squad, your opponent may be able to kill the crew before they can retreat. So there's enough sort of drama created around stealing a machine gun or a mortar team in Company of Heroes. In Iron Harvest, it's not very exciting. In Company of Heroes, I think it's kind of frustrating the way that you like drop Panzerschrecks and stuff because it's just very RNG based, and it's a massive swing. Like if you're playing as Axis, and now your opponent's conscript squad has a Panzerschreck. Like, oh man, that sucks for you. Not only do you lose a Panzerschreck, but now you have the squad that can sprint around, can throw anti-tank grenades, has a Panzerschreck. So dropping the slot weapons Like that system, I wouldn't be sad if they just removed that system entirely in Company of Heroes. But stealing support weapons is very interesting in Company of Heroes. Ein Harvest, I'm not sure.
That's actually a good point that I do think is a nod in Company of Heroes' favor, because the SWAT just swaps out. You don't have that interesting, like, I have three guys in my conscript squad left, and then my weapon has the other three guys in it. The other thing that made me think of is there's no, as far as I know anyway, there's no decrewing, or there's no rebuilding the wreck of a mech so that it becomes your mech. I don't feel like they have that kind of swapping with the higher tier units the way that Company of Heroes does. And it didn't really occur to me until you mentioned that. But now that I think about that, I kind of wish that they had something like that, because I think once a mech is dead, it's just gone forever.
I think there's a chance. I know in the single player, I played through quite a few of the missions, so it could be just part of the level design, what have you, is that you can recrew damaged vehicles. You can salvage them for resources, but there's also, if you have an engineer squad, they can repair it, and it goes from being uncrewed to being crewed by it doesn't use any of the models from the engineering squad. They just are able to sort of like resurrect it.
You're talking about
I didn't
mechs or
notice
weapons?
that in 2v2.
Like with mechs, I'm pretty sure they just get deleted. Like once it's just
Maybe it was specific just for the level, because it was an objective to like repair 2 of these mechs, and then they came back to life. I had never seen it in the multiplayer, so maybe it's not a real thing. Maybe it's just level scripting.
I think that happens with support weapons, though. Like a machine gun team it takes a bunch of damage, and then like the engineer squad gets ejected out of it when it takes damage. Something that's sort of strange. I guess so. The last thing, unless you had something to add to that, Bren, the last thing we haven't talked about is melee, the melee combat. I always say melee funny, melee. Melee combat. Any thoughts on melee?
I haven't
used it at all.
I haven't tried the new system. I only played it under the original patch where it was broken. And as someone who was playing Rust units, I was happy with it because you could just wreck a squad. So I don't know how it works now. I haven't fiddled around with it yet with the current system.
Yeah,
so
the only squad that I've used melee for is a Rustivit like knife man squad, where they don't have ranged weapons. So when you tell them to attack, or you can use the jump pack ability to get into close range, they just punch with knives. So I've never taken a ranged unit and put it into like melee mode. I feel like it's not something that you need. I feel like it doesn't add value to the game, but this is me
I feel like
not having tried it yet.
I feel like the point is to take those ranged squads and tie them up so that they can't participate at a range. So you get them up close, you get them tied up, they can't shoot whatever they want to shoot. So I definitely see the value in it. It's something that, in Dawn of War 2 is a really, really big thing, is to tie up ranged squads. So I think that it's definitely worth getting right since they have it in the game, but I just don't know how it works right now. I haven't seen it in action, the latest version.
Yeah, me too. I have only played the old version. And I know that, so this is not very fruitful. One of the things that I noticed though, like what I was really hoping for was that different squads would be stronger in melee combat. So like obviously you have specific melee units, and that's pretty straightforward. But I was hoping that engineers would be like really good in melee combat, because their range combat's awful. They have these like crappy pistols, and they had these like spades and stuff. And in World War One, like using a spade was actually a better weapon than a bayonet.
Like trench spades. They would put like crazy spikes and barbed wire.
Because a bayonet gets stuck in someone's chest. A spade, it's more useful. And then I remember doing this in combat, and my engineers were in combat against a vanguard squad, and I was like, I just intuitively assumed like, okay, well, my engineers will beat the riflemen or whatever, and they didn't. They lost, and I don't know if it's because like Rustiviets were supposed to be this melee faction, and therefore they had stronger units, or just if rifleman squads in general were to beat engineers. And like with medics too, you were saying medics are pretty useless in combat. It'd be nice if they had some crazy like melee attack, like, or some ability. they could heal themselves while being stabbed or
And
whatever.
bone saws. Or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Yeah, like the Half-Life, not Half-Life, the Team Fortress medic.
Team Fortress. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously,
And
that's
the Polanian light mech, their exosuit does melee, doesn't it?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it does. It's kind of an all-rounder squad, decent range.
The one that has like a bayonet on the end of the rifle.
They're
It's really tall and thin.
That's the
that
sprint, the
no,
sniper thing. It's called, right?
It's not an actual mech. It's a squad of 3 guys in exosuits. It's kind of like
Yes.
It's not an actual mech. It's their version of the mortar guy from Saxony.
Yeah,
They're in the
I'm pretty sure
barracks, right?
they do melee as well.
they do.
Yeah.
What I was thinking of is for Polonia, the really thin mech. Its ability when you rank up to Veterancy 1, it has like a charge move. So it
Yeah.
has that long, sort of like sniper rifle, very low rate of fire, but he runs in with a bayonet, which is kind of a cool ability because he's so agile and like mobile. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so like back to the engineers and stuff, like I wish they had this role as a melee unit, but then you get this whole balance thing of like, if the engineers can beat riflemen in melee, then why wouldn't you just spam the cheap engineer unit and just outnumber them? So then you're like, well, do you make engineers like the Stern Pioneers in Company of Heroes where they're like expensive, so you can't just spam them? Or because the problem with the reason why melee works so well in Dawn of War 2 is you have like specific anti-melee counters. You have like the shotguns for the scouts who like have this knockback ability. And so I don't know if again, back to like scatter and penetration, I don't know if Iron Harvest has the mechanical depth to make melee an interesting mechanic. Instead, you just have like...
Well, I mean, they have garrisoning, they have bunkers that are more common than in Company of Heroes. I think there's potential there. They also have, they do have pinning with their machine gun. So I think they've got the pieces to make it work. It might be interesting to see like an expansion or something, add a couple of different units so you get a bit more depth in terms of what each faction can do to deal with it if it becomes an issue.
I would want to see more dedicated melee units. I think to really, like, to me, it's kind of weird if 2 ranged units are sort of engaging each other in melee. Like, I understand the idea of the exosuit guys because that's what they do, but maybe I just haven't played enough Dawn of War where, like, I just have a hard time imagining the strategy of tying up a ranged unit with another. Maybe I guess it's a cheaper ranged unit, and the idea is to just sort of stalemate them, get them stuck in an area so they can't do DPS at range.
Like I know you have those the light machine gun teams. I think they're only a reinforcement thing, or sorry, what is it called? Is it reinforcements? Like
reinforcement, yeah. I think so.
Like they're
Or
a
the
super
reserves.
powerful squad. If you tie them up with just like a rifleman squad, then that's good value.
I see.
Or another example with Polania and the Russians, if you want to, like the Polania, I think they have longer range and they're pretty powerful at range. If you use an engineer squad to tie up one of the Polania rifleman squads, then you can get your Russia shotgun squad up close without taking damage. So at that point, the engineer squad isn't there to do damage. It's just there to prevent the Polanian squad from doing damage. Okay. So that's just one example of why you might want to tie them up. So
I need to experiment with that. The next time I play, I'll try a lot more of the melee combat.
Man, if it wasn't midnight in your time, I'd say, like, hey, we should play some Iron Harvest. Because I don't want to like play auto match, because then I'll just get stomped by people who've been playing it for 6 months. Like I just want to like play around with friends and stuff that I've only played it a few times. Like I've only played it a few times. Yeah, for me,
I'm looking forward to ladder. Getting stomped over and over again by the high skill players is
they know the meta. They know how to like optimally play.
Yeah, I know.
I'm less interested in having more melee specialists or like melee only units, and I want to see more regular units have melee as a situational thing that you would do sometimes, and you have that in Dawn of War 2. Like tying up a machine gun team especially. But in Iron Harvest, because the arcs are so tiny and machine guns are so small, like you don't have to tie it up in melee to mitigate it. You can just walk around it. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like melee isn't that interesting, but we'll see.
I do think that's part of what the exosuits are for, though. I think the Rustviet exosuit and the Polonian exosuit are both kind of, they work in melee, I believe.
Maybe they're suppression immune or something.
I believe so. I think they count as a mech. It's just like a squad mech.
Yeah, so I think that's what Iron Harvest needs, is more emphasis on like mixing in different things, machine gun teams, exosuits, mortars, and not just blobbing like 5 squads of vanguards around the map, because that's just like not interesting. But that's all you really see currently. Well, I think we can basically wrap it up now. So I think I've been very cynical, and maybe this is unfair of me, but I feel like Iron Harvest is just kind of like every other RTS game that has come out in the past, 7 years now. It's going to be like, comes out, people play the campaign, people play multiplayer for a week, get bored of it, go back to Age of Empires, StarCraft, Company of Heroes, whatever. Like, I just don't think it's going to have... It'll be cool, like, wow, this is really... Look at this flashy mechs, cool, interesting, nice, interesting mechanics. But there's just better games, because it just doesn't have that, like, spark of creative design, like this really strong artistic vision, other than just like, hey, let's make some cool mechs. I don't know. What do you guys think?
So I'm going back to what I said earlier. I'm actually more excited about the prospect of Iron Harvest than I have been for quite a while in the RTS space. I mean, yeah, it's a flawed game, and honestly, I'm not the best person at picking winners in the RTS space. I still like Dawn of War 3. I still play Grey Goo. So I worry that me liking something is pretty much a guarantee that it's going to fail.
Aww.
But I mean, hey, I'm looking at what I've backed in the RTS space. I still like Deserts of Karak. I think that's an underrated game. So maybe in 2 years I'll be, poor Iron Harvest, that was an underrated game. But I'm going to have fun with it as long as it lasts. So, it's not the best game ever made, but it checks the boxes I'm looking for right now in the game. So I'm pretty happy with it on a broad scale. I think there's a lot of things you can quibble with. We kind of got in the weeds on balance, and that's, even as we were, picking apart some of the stuff, we were saying, this is easy to change. This could be fixed pretty easily. To me, the mechs are fun, and that goes a long way. It's a nice world. The game looks pretty good.
Hi, Brandon's wife.
Sorry, I got a little over exuberant, I think. There.
Sorry,
So,
we're wrapping up.
ultimately, though, maybe my expectations are aligned in the wrong way, but I'm looking forward to this thing coming out, and if I get a couple of YouTube videos out of it and some good stories, hopefully I can still be playing it 8 or 9 months from now, and that's, if I get that, then I'll be happy.
I feel maybe I'm now kind of in the middle. It's fun to play now, and honestly, I'm enjoying the single player as well. I don't typically play a lot of single player games. I'm more like a social co-op person. So that's a testament. The level design seems to be pretty good. It's a cool setting. Obviously, the 1920 plus setting is really cool. It's cool, Callum, you were saying this earlier, to hear like a Polish accent. You don't typically play games with like Eastern European factions and stuff, so it's cool that there's a Polish faction. And you can tell that the team is really passionate about it. Will I be playing it in 6 months from now? Probably not, but it is fun to play now. I think the mechs are visually quite impressive. All the attention to detail, like making all the parts move in different ways. It's fun. I just don't think it will have that much lasting power, but I need to play more. Like, there's still a lot of mechanics I don't fully understand, so we can play some 2v2s later if you're interested, or 3v3s.
Yeah, bring it on. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm, as you say, I'm more excited for Iron Harvest than I have been in a long time for other RTS games. Like I have enjoyed it. It just there has been some frustrations with getting stomped by people who spam 7 squads of vanguards. You're like, oh come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's coming out soon, so I'll give it a playthrough of the campaign. I agree also in that I don't really like campaigns much. I never played Company Heroes 2 campaign. I played
Neither have I.
Ardennes Assault, which is actually really good, but I think the base KOTOR campaign isn't very good. But anyway, yeah, let's wrap it up. So thanks for joining, guys. That was good. It's good to have a bit of a diversity because, yeah, I can be the fun police a bit too much. I'm very cynical, I think, a lot of times about RTS games. So, yep. All right. I do have the Twitter handles for these folks on their names. So let's wrap it up then. Unless you have any final words.
No, I gotta get going.
All right.
It was great talking with everybody. But,
yeah, it was fun.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
All right. See yous.